Good morning. Welcome to my presentation. My name is Alyssa Harris. I'm going to be talking about legal issues in kinesiology with a specific emphasis on physical education classrooms. I chose the facility of a physical education classroom, specifically high school, because I am a PE teacher. I want to provide the best atmosphere for my students while following proper legal procedures. We hear about all these different things happening in PE classes, and it's always a concern about safety and how we're protecting the kids. So I wanted to make sure I investigated this fully to be the best prepared teacher that I can be. We're going to start off by talking about 3 past legal issues in physical education. The first one is called willful and wanton gross negligence. This is negligence that it's greater than ordinary negligence and may be considered worse than a careless person. The first example comes from Barr versus Cunningham in 2016. This was a particular case in which a student was injured playing floor hockey in his physical education class. The teacher had some eye protective wear, but did not have enough for the entire class. And after instruction about how to properly and safely play floor hockey, she decided to continue, but this student was hurt in the eye from the floor hockey ball. They were using a ball. The court ruled in favor of the teacher that she had taken proper steps. However, it is notable here that we should have the proper safety equipment, and we should be aware that sometimes people will get hit in the eye, and we have to know how to handle that, know how to respond quickly to these actions. A second one is causation as negligence. The teacher caused the accident. An example of this one was a back injury during weightlifting class. The student was asked to max out reps, and the issue in the balance here was whether the teacher had given proper instruction to the student, because he may not have known how to properly max out. You have to take into account the student's knowledge and the student's ability. How can they do it? Are they going to injure themselves by doing this activity? That was in Hutz versus West Heights Independent School District in 2011. The last example that we're going to use today for this category is negligence as a cause of action, civil rights, having the personal duty to respond with first aid but failing to do so reasonably. And this example comes from something called dry drowning, in which a student may, or any individual, may be swimming, may take in some water into the lungs, but seems to be fine afterwards, may have some coughing, and then later they end up drowning or dry drowning from the water that was taken into their lungs. And this happened, this was a PE class in a pool. The student took in some water, was coughing, sputtering, asked to sit out for a little bit. The teacher allowed the student to sit out, but then after a while asked the student to go back in. And then a couple hours later in class, the student actually could not breathe, was struggling, was taken to the hospital, and passed away of dry drowning. The court ruled in favor of the teacher because this is such a rare circumstance that the teacher did not have responsibility to know about dry drowning. This was in Spady versus Bethlehem Area School District in 2015. Now we're going to move to risk management. How can we manage all the risks that happen in a physical education class? There are tons of risks, and things happen and can happen all the time. So how do we manage those in a reasonable way? First, we can talk about broken bones. I've had some broken bones in my PE classes, but this is broken bones specifically from activity being performed. And the example is a broken neck from gymnastics in class from Larson versus the Independent School District in 1979. This teacher was a new teacher who was filling in and was doing a physical education class and began in a gymnastics unit. The student was trying to do a back handspring and broke their neck. Here, it's important to remember and to think about what risk are we putting the students in? Should they be performing an activity that they are not experienced in? And should we even engage in something that is that risky? You could prevent this from omitting those high-risk activities. Most gym teachers do not have gymnastics in their physical education courses anymore. And if they do, they are very controlled and not as high risk as they may have been in the past. It's also important not to push students to do something they cannot do or don't feel comfortable doing. If they don't feel confident in doing some activity that you may have them doing, that is high risk. Injury is more likely to occur than if they feel comfortable doing it. Secondly, injury from equipment. In this example, a student was hit in the head with a golf club in Hemedy versus Long Beach Unified School District in 2006. The students were all lined up practicing their golf swings. But it was shown in this one that the teacher did not have proper control of the class. They were too close together when they were practicing their golf swings. It is so important for risk management to make sure that the students have enough room, that they're not going to swing the golf club and hit the next student next to them, that they're not going to swing the baseball bat and hit the student next to them as well. You can mitigate this by supervision, watching all the students. We all know that students can sometimes get silly with their equipment. So we have to make sure that they're properly supervised, which will deter that activity. Proper control of the class, just general class management. If the class knows the rules, knows the procedures, they're much less likely to do something that is silly and can cause injury. And then informing the students of the risk, letting them know that, hey, if you swing this golf club and it hits somebody else, that could cause serious damage to them, and bring that awareness to them so that they use more self-control. Lastly, there could be ball injury informing a concussion. This example was playing volleyball in physical education class, a common unit, a common sport. This was from Intman versus the Town of Trumbull Board of Education in 2014. These students were practicing serving back and forth, and there were a lot of balls going back and forth, and a girl got hit in the head with another student's ball and had a concussion. It's important here to remember some of the key points that came out in here were how many balls should be used in a PE class. If these are beginning students, should you reduce the number of balls so that they are aware, they can see better, they can be more cognizant of the balls that are going back and forth. Just evaluating that based off of skill. Also, instructing these students, instructing them, hey, be aware, make sure you're watching because there are a lot of balls going back and forth, reminding of them again and again and again of the risks that are associated so that they can give proper care to themselves. We're going to move on to the employment laws that are regarded, that are shown in physical education classrooms. It's important to mention here that employment is this is done through the public school system. So there's a lot of already overarching laws and rules regarding employment in those sections, rather than a private entity that employs differently. So one of the events that has come up is the health status of a physical education teacher. Here we can see in Blodgett versus the Board of Trustees in 1971, a PE teacher was fired because she was overweight. They deemed that she could not perform the duties required of her because she was overweight. However, all the students appreciated her, thought that she taught well. It was also noted in this case that a teacher can use those students as demonstrations in physical education class. The teacher does not have to be able to do all the activities and all the skills that they're being taught. In this case, the court ruled in favor of the teacher. But to mitigate this, to prevent this from happening, a complete investigation should be given into the ability of the teacher. The administration in this case said that she could not perform the duties that were required of her. However, it was shown that after further investigation that she was able to complete those duties. Health and fitness should be promoted throughout the entire school to just promote a healthy atmosphere among the faculty. And lastly, professional development that focuses on inspiring students through living out the curriculum. We never would want an English teacher who didn't like to read. In the same way, we don't want physical education teachers who don't want to be physically active. So we should be promoting that through professional development, through the education of our teachers, that we want to live out that curriculum. The specific duties under employment of physical education teachers. This teacher was injured when interacting with a student, but it was not considered part of his regular work duties. He was trying to build rapport with the student outside of gym class, and he was injured. Therefore, the workers' compensation did not cover his injury. Mitigation, we need to have clear employment guidelines in the contract and training for risky behavior so this doesn't happen. Lastly, discrimination because of sex. In this one, there was a disparity between facilities based on male and female teachers. The male teachers had their private room, their private changing area, whereas the female teacher had to use the locker room of the students. This in Harrington versus Vandalia Butler Board of Education. They ruled in favor of the teacher that she needed to have the same facilities as the males. Mitigation of this is fair building codes, okay? Like when we're building a building, make sure that we have these the exact same. But however, there may be times when the building is old and we need to use what we have. If there are funds available, we need to remedy that and make them equal. It's also important to have somebody from the outside evaluate. It's sometimes hard when we're in a situation the whole time to see our flaws. So if we can have somebody outside, have fresh eyes on the situation, that can be very helpful. So how do we apply this biblically? God asks us to treat all those around us with his love and with his care. Treat them as we've been treated. There are so many aspects that can come up in schools regarding legality and regarding physical education and regarding student injury and how are we going to respond when somebody's injured. It's so important to be filled from above, to be filled with his grace, to be filled with his goodness and his care and concern, so that then we can let that flow through us to impact students. Proverbs 11:25 says, whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. So we take that word refresh. If we are refreshed because we can be refreshed because we refresh others. We refresh our students. We treat them with care. We treat them the way we want to be treated. We treat them with love. We fulfill all the responsibilities. If they're hurt, if they're injured, how are we going to respond to them? We will be refreshed if we treat them well. James 1:5 says, if any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God. We need to seek God for wisdom in determining if we're employing people well. We need to seek God for wisdom to determine if we are giving proper care to the students, if we are treating them when they're injured, if we're taking good compassion for them. Luke 6:31 also says, do to others as you would have them do to you. How would I want my children treated in a facility? That's how I as a teacher should be treating my students. That's how I should be caring for them. That's how I should be interpreting the rules. Well, what's the intent of this rule and how can I treat that student with the intent of that law and its goodness? Lastly, what do we do when it gets tough? As a teacher, we know that we cannot teach Jesus in the public schools. I teach at a private school, so I have the opportunity to get to pray with students and get to mentor them that way. But in a public school, we can pray for them privately. We can teach godly principles, and we can demonstrate his love for us in our actions to them. If they're asking us to do something we do not agree with, we need to pray about those situations. What does God ask us to do in that situation? But ultimately, our faith is the most important. And so if that takes us away from that employment and we need to find different employment, then that's what God is calling us to do in those tough situations. Lastly, here are my references. Thank you.